I'm going to give you an example of reading a scene in a Shakespeare play as a way for you to get started. I'm going to plunge right into reading the act and scene because you can get background information and other interpretive materials elsewhere. Here I'm simply focusing on how to make sense of Shakespeare when you're reading it. This is Act 1, Scene 1 from Othello. It's not the whole of Act 1, Scene 1. It is the first 90 lines. It is set in Venice. It's on a street. That's helpful. Even more helpful is to know who the characters are and what the relationship is. One character is Iago, and he is the villain, although he's more of an anti-hero. He has a major role in the play, and a lot of the really bad things that happen in the tragedy are brought about by Iago, who is extremely gifted with language. Along with him is Rodrigo. Rodrigo was rather a wealthy man until he met Iago. But right now, Iago has him giving him money, and we learn that in the first 2 lines. Rodrigo is paying Iago because Rodrigo believes that Iago will help Desdemona fall in love with Rodrigo. Rodrigo has an infatuation. He's sort of stalking Desdemona. We can tell that because Brabantio, Desdemona's father, when he sees Rodrigo, says, "Oh, not you again. You've been hanging around our house all the time," which would suggest stalker-like behavior. Needless to say, Rodrigo has not a chance with Desdemona, and he's also, we learn here, he's not terribly bright, and Iago's very bright. So that's the relationship between these two. And the scene, as a beginning scene, it's a little difficult to read. So when you first start this out, you might be thinking, "Oh no, I can't possibly read this play." But you can. This first scene is a little more demanding. Iago's language tends to be more demanding, but the plot arc of Othello is not as complicated as other plays like Hamlet or Lear, and you can do this, and you will get used to it with practice and until you find that it comes fairly easily. So Rodrigo starts, and they're right in the middle of a conversation. Rodrigo says, "Tush," which is actually an Elizabethan Jacobean term for just, please, never tell me. So they're obviously right in the middle of conversation. "Oh, don't tell me that. I take it much unkindly that thou, Iago, who hast had my purse as if the strings were thine, shouldst know of this." So, "Oh, don't tell me this, Iago. I take it much unkindly." In other words, I think that's very unkind of you. "That thou, Iago," and here is a more difficult passage, "who has had my purse as if the strings were thine, shouldst know of this." So I take it very unkindly that you, Iago, who have had my purse as if the strings were yours, should know of this and not tell me. The purse as if the strings were thine requires you to think about what a purse might look like in the 16th and 17th centuries or even earlier. Obviously, this is a purse with strings. It's a drawstring purse. So think of it as if you'd said, "You have had my purse as if or my wallet as if it were your own. You have had my purse as if the strings were yours. You could just open it and close it whenever you felt like." And that is a metaphor because he doesn't literally mean you've had my purse as if the strings were your own. I haven't given you my purse. I haven't let you hold on to the strings. But if you've had my purse as if it were your own, or the strings were your own, you've had my money at your disposal. So in other words, Iago, I've been giving you money, and you know this information, and you haven't told me? I can't believe it. Iago responds, "Splud" is another sort of light curse word. It actually means it's a short version of God's blood. But so it's kind of like, "Oh, sugar," or "Geez." But you will not hear me. In other words, you're not listening. ever I did dream of such a matter, abhor me. Now that first part, if ever I did dream of such a matter, is quite modern. So if I ever dreamed of such a thing, abhor me. Now abhor me might be more difficult for you because you might not use abhor. I think it's not commonly used anymore, but it's a great word. It means hate me, abhor me. If I ever dreamed of such a matter, hate me. You should listen to me. I'm still your buddy. And by the way, can I have more money? Rodrigo responds, still angry, thou toldst me thou didst hold him in thy hate. And you are wondering, who's him? And they're not going to tell you until later, because they're right in the middle of their conversation. These are characters acting on stage. They know who they're talking about, and you're sort of the fly on the wall listening in. So a lot of times, especially at the beginning of a Shakespeare play, you have to sort of be patient and wait for things to unfold. As you're watching, you'll get to know what's happening. So, Rodrigo, you told me you hated him. Oh, Iago says, despise me if I do not. Of course I do. Now comes more complicated. 3 great ones of the city, in personal suit to make me his lieutenant, off-capped to him. Notice how I'm reading this. After each difficult passage, and I'm reading each sort of sentence by sentence because 3 great ones up to off-capped to him is one sentence. The lines, there's line breaks, but they continue past the lines, and the term for that is the lines are enjambed, meaning you should continue reading beyond the line breaks to make sense of the lines. So 3 great ones of the city, in personal suit to make me his lieutenant, off-capped to him. And as I go through these, I stop at the end of each difficult passage and I think, okay, what's he saying? So it's probably slower than the reading you're used to doing, but this is how you make sense of it and how you get used to reading it more quickly. So 3 great ones of the city. And this also is highly metaphoric. Great ones of the city are not great statues or not great places, they're great people. So leaders, 3 leaders of the city in personal suit. And in this case, it is not suit as in business suit, but suit as in lawsuit. So in personal meeting with him, so they met personally with him and asked him, whoever he is, we don't know yet, to make me his lieutenant. We get the impression that these folks, or at least Iago, is in the military, and indeed he is. So 3 leaders of the city met personally with him and asked him to make me his lieutenant, so give me a higher position. And they off-capped to him as they did they made that personal suit to him. Off-capped to him is Shakespeare coining words, and he's combining 2 words to give you an image. Off-capped literally is they took off their caps. They took off their hats. Cap is the old word for hat. They showed him, these are leaders of the city, and they showed so much respect to this person and begged so hard to make Iago the lieutenant that they took off their hats and probably bowed too. So they off-caps, they took their hats off and they begged in personal suit that he should make me a lieutenant. By the faith of man, I know my price. And that, if you think about it, is very similar to the way we would say it. I know what I'm worth. I know my price. I am worth no worse a place. And you have to connect that back to make me his lieutenant. I know what I'm worth, and I'm worth it. I would make a great lieutenant. I should get the promotion. But he, whoever he is, as loving his own pride and purposes, evades them. And evades them is to escape them. He doesn't listen to them because he's, according to Iago, whoever he is proud and just wants to do his own thing. He's into his own purposes. So he evades them, and with a bombast circumstance, horribly stuffed with epithets of war. And this is more difficult because the words bombast and epithet may not be common to our vocabulary now. So with a bombast circumstance, and bombast is to speak in a very pretentious or large way. Bombast is full of words and air. So with big words, horribly stuffed with epithets of war, with the language of war. So he spoke loud, long, and with all the language of warfare, horribly stuffed with the epithets of war. As a metaphor, you picture this sort of air-blown, loud-speaking boar who's stuffed himself with words that he doesn't even really understand. So he's proving to Rodrigo he really dislikes this person, because remember, Rodrigo has said, you told me you didn't like him, and Iago's trying to prove to him, oh, I don't like him, and he's using these negative descriptions of whoever it is, bombast circumstance, horribly stuffed with epithets of war, to prove that he really doesn't like this person, and he's Rodrigo's friend. And in conclusion, he non-suits my mediators. To non-suit is to take the suit away. So to take whatever they're asking for away from my mediators would be the people who are go-betweens for you. And in this case, that's those great ones of the city, the leaders. So he just took the suit, what they were asking for, away from the leaders, and for certain, says he, I have already chose my officer. So he's being sarcastic. He's quoting the guy turning down the leaders, saying, I've already chosen someone to be lieutenant, and it's not Iago. And what was he who got the job? That wasn't me getting the job. Forsooth, a great arithmetician, a mathematics specialist. Uh-oh. One Michael Cassio, a Florentine of Florence, Italy. Othello almost damned in a fair wife. That's a proverbial phrase in the time period, damned with a fair wife. In other words, he's got such a fair or hot wife that he's damned, because if your wife is really good looking, the idea is she's more likely to get to know other men. So you'll have a harder time hanging on to her. So we learn here Cassio, who's also a character in the play that we'll get to know, is damned in a fair wife. This is interesting to the play because we meet Cassio. He has a girlfriend named Bianca who is not his wife. But we learn that Cassio got the promotion to lieutenant. Iago did not get the promotion, and he's saying, look, I hate this guy. He didn't give me the promotion. He gave it to Cassio. Now he's going to prove that Cassio isn't the one that should have gotten the promotion because he's a mathematician, and he never set a squadron in the field, nor the division of battle knows more than a spinster. So this Cassio never set a squadron in the field. He's never actually been a leader of men or women in the battlefield, nor does he the division of battle know. He hasn't actually experienced battle himself any more than a spinster. And a spinster is a unmarried woman. So the idea here is he's building this idea that Cassio is this sort of mathematics specialist who just does plans on paper for battle instead of actually going to battle, which makes Iago compare him to an unmarried woman, perhaps rocking in a chair, knitting. So so he goes on, Iago, and calls Cassio and he says, unless the bookish theoric. So he's again building this idea that Cassio is just like this mathematician who studies and reads. He's bookish and a theorist rather than an actual soldier. Wherein the togged consuls can propose, those would be like Roman leaders, togged consuls, can propose as masterly as he. Mere prattle without practice is all his soldiership. So togged consuls of Rome would tell you that this theory is mere prattle. Prattle's a word we don't use, but prattle means to just chatter on without practice, and that is all that Cassio knows as soldiership. So he's saying that someone who's a theorist rather than in practice, as it were, as a soldier, will just chatter on without really knowing what they're saying. Without practice, you don't really know what you're talking about, and that's the whole of what Cassio knows. That is all his soldiership. But he, sir, and that's the he that they've been talking about, had the election, had the choice of who got the promotion to lieutenant. And I, of whom his eyes had seen the proof at Rhodes, at Cyprus, and on other grounds, Christian and heathen, must be believed and calmed. So he had the choice, and he chose this mere theorist, Cassio, who doesn't really know how to go on a battlefield, even though he had seen proof of how I, at Rhodes and Cyprus, had gone to battle for him. He could watch me fight himself. I have to be bleed and calmed. I have to be calm and let this mere spinster, bookish theorist take the position that I know I deserve. So right away we learn, one, that Rodrigo is giving all his money to Iago, and two, that Iago has a reason to, or is a bitter person. He's unhappy with his circumstances in life. And I'm going to stop there and pick up with the next video.